Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! INDY! A 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Galloway drives all the way to the hole, throws it up, got it! Indiana's got their first lead of this contest. It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody, welcome aboard. It is Friday, so that means it's time for the weekend. Appreciate you for being along, as always, as we're powered by Andy Moore Honda. AndyMooreHonda.com to get more to your door. And looking forward to today. Has been just a great week. Bob Kravitz on the program today. Zach Osterman. Casey Bartley, I believe, as well.
We will be joined by Casey Bartley. That is true.
Anything else, John Boy?
Greg Smith from Rivals.
Oh, yes. Greg Smith, National Football Director for Rivals, is going to join us as well. So we'll talk about that, talk about Indiana football and football in general. Oh, my God, you think that there's not a lot to talk about. The NCAA has penalized Florida State for violations, including with their NIL. On Thursday, the NCAA announced significant penalties for Florida State, including 2 years probation and disassociation with its NIL collective for 1 season for violating rules on using name, image, likeness offers as a recruiting inducement. That shocks me. I did not think that the NCAA would ever do a thing again about anything. But those penalties mark the first time the NCAA has severed the relationship between a school and its NIL collective as part of an infraction case. It is also the first time the NCAA has punished a school, coach, or collective for using NIL as an inducement. I don't know. How do you catch somebody doing that? That's what amazes me. They did not identify Atkins by name, but it is believed that that assistant was the assistant coach drove a prospect to a meeting with the head of the program's most prominent NIL collective during the prospect's official visit campus. At that meeting, the booster offered the prospect $15,000 per month and encouraged him to play for the Seminoles. So I don't know how they found that out. I have no idea. Investigators didn't find that head coach Mike Norvell had committed any violations, who is on the list to potentially replace Nick Saban at Alabama, which we'll get to. But I don't know how they caught him. But we're always wondering about the separation. Well, when you don't keep it separated and they catch you, they're going to wrap you on the knuckles. $15,000 a month. Not bad. What is that times 12? And what's 100,000, 150? I mean, I'm not fast enough with math to know the answer to that. And that's $180,000. Not a bad payroll to be on. But there you go. So there's that. But the bigger news, of course, who is going to replace Nick Saban at Alabama? Tonight, Indiana taking on Minnesota at home. Tomorrow, Indiana women travel to Iowa City I mistakenly thought the game was in Bloomington yesterday. My apologies. But Indiana women traveled to Iowa City on Saturday. That is going to be that's going to be the toughest game they've had this year, I think. I mean, I know that they went to Stanford and got blown out. I don't know what happened to allow them to get beaten that badly, but
and maybe the toughest game not only this year but so far, but maybe the toughest game that they'll have all season at this point. Considering it's a road game, you're facing Caitlin Clark, and I know you'll get a chance at taking her down in the Assembly Hall as well, which I did see this yesterday, Jim. I'm sure you saw it too. But Assembly Hall sold out for that game 50 days in advance. I think they said that's only the second time that's ever happened.
Well, the second time the sold outs ever happened.
Oh, is it? So I, for some reason, the way that it was worded in the post was that it's the only time it's ever sold out that far in advance.
I didn't see the post, and I don't remember how far in advance it sold out previously, but I would be surprised if it was not.
And it may just be referring to the women's team, but they weren't that specific. So,
yeah, who knows? But there is so much going on in the world of college football, and Nick Saban retiring is it's just gigantic. It's seismic because you're going to see a big time coach leave a program to go to Alabama, whomever it ends up being. Dan Lanning, I think I said this yesterday. Did I not say that Dan Lanning is going to come out of this with a big old fat raise from Oregon?
You did mention that. Is that? I know he's out of the running for the Alabama job, but was able to?
He is now, but he wasn't then.
Yes.
And so, yeah, I kind of thought that was going to be the case. That I'm like, you know what? I think this is just one of those old-fashioned contract boost. And, yeah, he's going to end up with a big old fat raise, I would imagine.
Let me go ahead and update you on the top 5 betting favorites to be the next head coach at Alabama. And I'll go from 5th to number 1. Number 5, Steve Sarkisian. Number 4, Lane Kiffin.
At Texas.
Yes, at Texas. And both Steve Sarkisian and Lane Kiffin.
Former assistants.
Yes, former assistants. They both have plus 900 odds at the moment. Mike Norvell at Florida State, plus 325. It would not surprise me one bit if he wants to get the hell out of Florida State right now with all the stuff that's going on. You're in the ACC, which feels like a lame.
Well, you don't know where you're going to be. You don't know where you're going to be. You don't know.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter. It's Alabama.
Yes, of course. And then the top 2, Kalen DeBoer at plus 125 and Dabo Sweeney at plus 105.
The Dabo played at Alabama. Kalen DeBoer is the only guy who has zero connection.
Now, I don't know if you knew this, but yesterday, so Joel Klatt went on Colin Cowherd yesterday and reported that Kalen DeBoer recently switched agents. His agent is now Jimmy Sexton, who has a relationship with a lot of SEC coaches, including Nick Saban. And that seems like a surefire sign that he is interested in the Alabama job.
My God. Dude, Jimmy Sexton is the guy who I reported this a while back. I sent out a tweet that says, I forget what it said, but it do not hire a coach represented by Jimmy Sexton because he currently had like 4 guys that his top 3 guys were being paid boatloads of money not to coach. He is the agent for Jimbo Fisher. Damn it, I can't think of who the next. The coach who has had the least success and made the most money in the world. The former coach at Florida State, former coach at Western Kentucky, Willie Taggart.
Yes.
That dude had no success anywhere and just made money from 4 different schools. That's what happened. Hey, John, get Jimmy Sexton on the phone. I need him. I'm not kidding. Get him on the phone,
He's
baby.
the best at getting people to get paid not to work, and what a gig it is.
Oh, what a gig that would be. I would miss you all so much. But if he could get me paid and get me paid more, which would not take much at all, to do nothing, yeah. It's crazy. But
I would say even though Dabo Swinney is the current favorite to land the job, I really don't see that being a very popular hire in Alabama the way that some people might think, just because he's such a polarizing figure. Yes, he's won plenty of national championships, especially, at Clemson specifically. And with the ties to Alabama as a former player, that obviously has its own appeal. But I feel like there's a chance that if you take Dabo Swinney and it doesn't work immediately, you immediately start getting division within the fan base on whether or not that was a good decision. And I think there's a lower risk if you take somebody like Kalen DeBoer for something like that happening as opposed to Dabo Swinney. But it could be a higher reward with Dabo Swinney, considering he's won the titles and Kalen DeBoer hasn't. So, and it may not be either one of those two, but those are the
Kalen
current
DeBoer has not been in a
favorites
position long enough to win a title. He had a run. He had a chance this year, but man, I would. And here's what I would jump at Kalen DeBoer over Dabo Swinney. Clemson has fallen off since the transfer portal era. Now, is it just coincidental? Very, very possible. But someone who has not only not fallen off and hasn't had to use it a ton is Kalen DeBoer. The year before Michael Penix arrived, and was Kalen coaching them then? I don't think so.
No, he was. So
they were 4-8.
Yeah, he did not coach those 4-8 teams.
4-8. In comes Kalen DeBoer. In comes Michael Penix. Voila. Roma Dunze was already there. I'm telling you, if I'm Alabama, I'm all over Kalen DeBoer. What do I always say about Kalen DeBoer? It's just simple. You want to
Google him.
Yeah. Forget about Kurt Cignetti for a second. You want to talk about somebody who wins and you should Google? That's Kalen DeBoer. He wins. He wins. His record is like 111 and
104-12 is his record.
104-12 as a head coach.
What more
he
needs
just
to be said?
Wins. Exactly. Google that. And I love Kalen. I would kind of hate it because I was looking forward to seeing him next fall. But I would have to go down to Tuscaloosa to do a story. That would be wild. Man, so we're going to keep track on that. We'll talk more about that later on today. Chris, appreciate you asking, do I think that Woody changes the lineup tonight? The only potential change at all would be Xavier not starting. But I don't know that Woody has what is the right word? I don't know that Woody. I don't know what's going on in that locker room. I don't know what the discussion was. I'm sure that Xavier said, hey, I didn't do that on purpose. It was a complete accident. And I'm sure that would be good enough for Woody. And so to answer your question, Chris, I'm going to go with no. I do not expect changes in tonight's lineup, but we'll talk about that. Indiana goes to Iowa tomorrow. There's plenty to talk about. Bob Kravitz joins us next. We'll be back with that and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome, Bob.
Welcome. Sorry about last week. That was I can't explain it.
It's okay.
I put my alarm on and I put PM instead of
dude, there is nothing I hate more than when I think I did that enough early on that I finally never do that now because I did it enough that it screwed me. I'm like, God dang it.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. You notice I put Bob Kravitz on bobkravitz.com, so I hope
that's totally fine. You can put whatever you want in your little name tag.
Dude, on the post-game shows, Todd Leary puts up something different every time.
He puts something ridiculous on there. Like, what is it?
MyJumpShot.com
is what it said.
Last time it was MyJumpShot.com. He's actually funny with it. He put something up related to the game, and last week it was MyJumpShot.com.
Well, what I wanted to go with was 5hole.com, but that was already taken.
Well, no, he just puts it up on here.
Oh, does he? Okay.
Oh, yeah, just for the fun of it.
When's IU's next game? Is it the Purdue game, or do they have one in between?
They have one tonight.
Oh,
tonight. Minnesota.
Here?
The Sultans.
Home, yeah.
Yes.
Okay, that's very winnable.
And then the next three are Purdue at home and then 2 on the road with Wisconsin and Illinois, which is a tough stretch.
Boom, boom, boom.
Yeah.
Got to win this one or you're in big. I mean, you may already be in big trouble, but if you lose tonight, you're definitely in big trouble.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
Oh, the natives are already restless.
The natives.
I can imagine.
They may be surrounding the moat.
The wailing and gnashing of teeth, as you say, Jim.
The wailing and gnashing of teeth will begin.
Will commence. Oh, this coffee's good.
How about Kalen DeBoer emerging as a top favorite to take the Alabama to?
I had not heard that. Did that happen this morning?
No,
So
it hasn't happened.
No, there's nothing like report. There's betting odds, and the top 2
candidates odds. Okay,
odds are Dabo Sweeney and Kalen DeBoer.
Oh, okay, I got you. All right, I thought there was a story that he was.
Now, Joel Klatt yesterday was talking with Colin Cowherd, and he said he'd be shocked if it's not Kalen DeBoer. I don't know if he knows anything, but that's.
Yeah. I would too, because I don't see Dabo Sweeney leaving Clemson.
Well,
I don't know that Alabama's his dream job anymore just because he played there.
All right, here we go, guys.
Top Shock Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday, brought to you by Chop Shop, where you can find Inside Indiana basketball each Monday night with Don Fisher and Mike Whitson. Welcome in the man, Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. How are you, sir?
I am splendid. How are you, buddy?
I cannot complain.
What's the hat you're wearing?
That's the Ugly Grouper.
The Ugly Grouper. Is that a restaurant?
It is. It's down on Anna Maria Island in Florida.
Okay. All right. I got the Hartford Whalers. So we're with the seafood motif.
Oh, that's right. Yes. Yes. Great catch. Great catch. Speaking of catches, the Colts, I know that you've put out a lot of content on them here of late as their season has come to an end, and now they have to start looking towards next year.
Right.
and there's certain things that they need to do to continue to move forward. And of course, Michael Pittman Jr. is someone you think that is at the top of that list, probably.
I don't think there's any question. Look, they would rather not franchise him. The franchise tag is $21.6 million. So we won't be passing the hat for poor Michael, even if he's franchised. But look, he finished 5th in the league in receptions, and that's without
a backup quarterback.
With a backup quarterback and with no other receivers who really scare you. You know, if you're a defense, who are you going to focus on? Michael Pittman. You're not going to focus on Josh Downs. You're certainly not going to focus on Alec Pierce, because all he's going to do is run 40 yards down the field for no apparent reason. So Michael Pittman is central to what they're trying to do. And if they fail to bring him back, that would be management malpractice, in my view.
Is there any reason for you to think that they won't get this accomplished?
No, I talking to Ballard, we talked with Ballard and Anthony Richardson yesterday over at the Colts complex. I have no reason to think that this won't get done, but it might get a little ugly there for a while. I think Pittman learned from Jonathan Taylor as to how to handle these things, and I think he's going to play hardball with them.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing how that run turns out, because they're on the right path.
Yeah, they're on the ascent. They're on the ascent.
When you're one play away from making the playoffs, and they didn't get it done, but with all that they went through this year, to even be in that position, that was more than surprising.
Oh, absolutely. I know some guy who looks a lot like me who picked them to finish with 3 to 4 wins. So, I mean, yeah, they overachieved something fierce. Now, I will say this. They had a 6 or 7 game stretch where they faced nothing but backups and rookies. And sometimes there were backups who were rookies, as in Aiden O'Connell from Purdue. So, they weren't facing a murderer's row. Next year, their schedule gets significantly tougher, and they're going to face a lot of solid quarterbacks. So, I don't think that just because Anthony Richardson returns, they suddenly become a 10 or 11 win team. I think they're still going to go through a lot of those rookie challenges that, Richardson's he's going to face those rookie challenges. So to think they're going to suddenly pop into the playoffs is probably a foolish idea.
Yeah, I agree. We'll see how that turns out. All kinds of stuff going on in the sports world. And I know that you're at the Pacers game the other night. I saw you there. And so there's so much happening. The Pacers, they get a win without Tyrese Halliburton, and they hold Washington to only 104 points along the way. So there's a couple of positives for them there that they can build on because they're not going to have him for a couple of weeks.
Right. It looks like about 7 days. They've got a 12-game road trip starting. They play in Atlanta tonight, and then they go on the road. And they got Phoenix, they got Sacramento, they got the Nuggets, they got somebody else I forget. So this is going to be a real tough road trip. If they can, in this 7-game stretch or so, if they can go 3-4, that would be fabulous. I think that would be great. I thought the other night TJ O'Connell changed everything. Nemhard was really, really struggling starting at the point, and TJ came in and changed the trajectory of the game completely. It's going to be hard without Halliburton, but I think they're in a little bit better shape, a little bit better chance to handle his absence than they were last year when they lost. I think it was 9 out of 10 after he went down and they fell out of playoff contention. I think with Obi Toppin and Bruce Brown and a team that's a year older, I think they'll be able to handle this fairly well.
Yeah, we'll see about that. Indiana men's basketball on the hardwood. Women's basketball, they travel to Iowa tomorrow night, by the way.
I'm watching that.
So that's going to be just a Iowa already has a capacity crowd every night. So that's going to be like playing in hell for them.
Right.
And Caitlin Clark is probably playing as good as she's ever played. And that's saying something. You just can't. I know a lot of people she turns them off because of all of her antics, but you know what? If that's a player that is, if they're on your team, you absolutely freaking love.
Oh yeah.
You hate them if they're against you, but it's because they're kicking your ass.
Well, let's talk about the referees. I mean, in the NBA, every call gets argued. In the NBA, I mean, LeBron has never committed a foul in his life. Okay, so for some reason, when a woman does it, there's a different standard. I don't know if they're supposed to be more polite, but she's a competitor. I have no problem with it. She's just like every single NBA player in existence. They bitch about every single call.
Yep. So we'll get to see that tonight. Indiana men's basketball hosting the Minnesota Golden Gophers, which normally you'd say, oh, all right, there you go. Nice, easy win. And it might turn out to be that way, but Minnesota is 3-1 in conference play,
right,
although they have not played anybody really. But hey, 3-1 is 3-1. And Indiana at home is there's a little advantage. Is there a line, John? I have not looked. I'd love to see what the line on that game is, because
I haven't seen this yet, but I'll give you an
picked
answer.
Indiana to go like 1-7 this month.
It's entirely possible. It is entirely possible with their schedule coming up and the way they're playing. I think they'll take care of business at home here in this next stretch. But look, they have a really nice front court, but they have no guard play. I've really been disappointed in Xavier Johnson. I understand.
You don't say.
I understand that, it takes a little while to get your feet under you. But grabbing a guy by the nads, no, you can't have that. This is one of the oldest players in college basketball. He needs to know better. His team needs him. Gabe Cupps has, some nice skills and all that, but he's not the guy you want at point for a team that's going to contend for an NCAA tournament berth, which right now is not in the offing.
Quick, betting odds.
4.5.
Yeah, there you go. 4.5 in favor of Indiana in this game.
Thank you, though. Appreciate you. Yeah. Indiana actually a 4.5 point favorite, which that number actually surprises me.
Yeah.
Not that I don't think they can't cover that, but I'm just surprised because of how that they have been playing. But
what would be crazy, Jim, the other night was they had nice momentum in the first half. Then he subs out 4 guys.
Really, I had not heard that, and I did not.
Shut up.
No, I was not kidding on you. I'm like, it is. But the worst thing is, and I was talking to Rick Bozich about this the other day. He got pissed off about being asked about it again, because we've asked him about it over and over, but he is answering the question as if everyone doesn't realize that there has to be subs in the game.
Right.
And I said, we all know that, but do they have to all be at the same time?
Right. This is not like the NBA where every guy can really, really play. This is college. You got guys who you bring them in, and there is a serious step down in the quality of play. And I like some. I like Banks. I think they've got some decent bench pieces. But you put 4 of them together, and look, when you don't have a point guard who's playing the way a point guard should play, That spells trouble. So I thought that was really a silly move, and I think that's one of the reasons why they ended up losing.
Without question, and I don't understand what he doesn't understand. But then here's another point. If you go back, and I'm trying to pull them up. Someone sent me one yesterday. Larry, thank you. A box score from 1980. Indiana versus Ohio State. It went to overtime. Two guys played 45 minutes in that game.
Yeah.
Mike Woodson was in that game. It was only his sixth game back from missing all the year from back surgery. I don't know how many minutes he played because I couldn't read it clearly enough. But last year, how many minutes a game did Trace Jackson Davis play?
A whole bunch.
Almost all of them.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden, it's changed to where it has to be this way. But there doesn't seem to be an understanding of the question. I mean, I'm like, does he understand the question is not about substitutions? It's about how you're subbing.
Right.
And,
right. Four new guys makes no sense, Jim. I mean, 4 new guys.
Pushed on it. He said, I'm not going to answer that question for the fans, for you, or anybody.
Okay.
Well,
you know what?
$4.2 million. Don't you have to answer?
Yeah. I mean, the guy got a $1 million a year raise, for God's sake. I mean, the least you can do is be accountable to the fans. And I guarantee you, everybody sitting at home was watching that game going, what in the hell are you doing, Mike?
Yeah. And where does that money come from ultimately?
Well, fans, I mean,
donors are, I mean, doesn't that money ultimately come from donors? Not all of it, but some of it. I know there's a lot of TV money built into that, but
Scott Olson likes to give out money. I wish he was my employer.
I'm telling you.
He gave Tom Allen more money than God with no offset language in his contract, $20 million buyout. And now he's given Mike Woodson $1 million for getting the team to the play-in game and through to the second round in the second year. So it's not like Mike has done anything spectacular. He's been better than Archie, but you, me, and my pet hedgehog could do better than Archie.
Yeah, if Indiana were to buy out Mike Woodson after this season, that would cost $12.6 million.
Ain't gonna happen.
And if you add that to Archie and to Tom Allen, that comes up to $42.6 million in what's called dead money.
Right. Look, I don't think that. I think the clock starts ticking on Mike Woodson now. I don't think he's in trouble. I don't think, regardless of how this year plays out, I don't think he's in trouble. But by God, he better. He's got McNeely coming in next year. He's got some good kids coming in. And who knows, Xavier might find a way to play another season somehow. But next year, I think, is going to be a really key year. What I can't understand is you look at Indiana State, and they got guards who can shoot. Why can't Indiana find a damn guard who can shoot the freaking basketball? I don't understand it.
Because for whatever reason, they are recruiting. They seem to be recruiting guys on stature, not the actual talent of what they can do. Because what you do in high school is not the same as what you can do in college. Perfect example, Romeo Langford. Romeo Langford scored all those points in high school, but he couldn't do that in college.
No,
he couldn't shoot the ball worth crap. And I don't want to hear about that damn thumb. That had nothing to do with it. If it was his thumb, the Celtics would not have taken a ping pong paddle and taped it to his left hand as soon as he arrived in Boston to try to fix his damn shot.
Right.
He just didn't shoot the ball well. Gabe Cupps, he shoots sideways.
I know. Something's wrong with Galloway's shot too, and I'm not a shot doctor, but his form to me looks different than it did last year.
Well, I can tell you, Todd Leary, whom I have immense respect for when it comes to basketball, because he's a student of the game. He loves analyzing, and he talks about it all the time. How, like, even with the free throws, he doesn't think it's as much mental. Where I still think that that's a big part of it, but he just says it just comes down to mechanics. These guys are just not good shooters. Their form is just not good. And he just breaks down the small points. Why isn't anybody on that staff of Indiana that goes like 8 deep of guys? You've got 3 assistants. You got Calvert and Jordan. They're both great shooters. And then you've got, I don't know, 2 or 3 other quote unquote consultants, which no idea what they're being paid to do. But that's a large staff, and for all these problems that are not being fixed. Right. It seems like these are common problems, Bob. The blocking out, the rebounding. They get their ass kicked rebounding by everybody.
They don't play hard. I mean, they really don't play. And look, they're a post-up team, and in college basketball, it's about the guards. And they don't have the guard play. And why they don't have guards, I don't have any idea. Maybe portal guys saw that Johnson and Galloway were going to be starting, and there's no reason to come to Indiana. I don't know the answer to that. But for God's sake, I mean, this is the state that gave us so many great shooters over the years. Rick Mount and Larry Bird and and so on. Why they can't find a decent shooter? I guess McNeely will be that guy next year, hopefully. But right now, the shooting and the guard play are abysmal.
We've got to take a break. Bob Kravitz, what's up next for you, sir?
Well, I've got the IU Purdue on Tuesday. That'll be fun. It'll be about 27 degrees below zero. I'm looking forward to coming to Bloomington.
Oh, man. Jeez.
You Pacers are on the road. Can they survive this road trip without Tyrese Halliburton? And, still Colts news. I might follow up with something on Anthony Richardson. We'll see. So I'm staying busy.
I think you should write something about me.
About you?
Yeah.
What exactly am I going to write?
I don't know. There's all kinds of moronic things.
Yeah,
all the goofy things.
I like moronic.
Yeah,
I do a lot of them myself.
I'm all over that. I think I might be the president.
Yeah.
Just kidding, Bob.
Yeah, go ahead. Please.
I had nothing but moronic things to say. So go. You, sir.
Okay. No. And a lot of big national stories. Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, Nick Saban. So I might chime in on that. I'm not entirely sure. I got to get my coffee. Got to get my handy coffee.
How does Alabama just not go straight to Kalen DeBoer? I mean, we joke, and on the start of our show, we've added in that funny quote by Kurt Cignetti. It's simple. I win. Google me. That's actually you want to know who that really belongs to? That's Kalen DeBoer.
Yeah.
He Google his ass. He wins. He's won his whole life. He's 104-12 right now. And Incredible. He took over a Washington team that was in the dumpster. They were 4-8 when he arrived, and bam, 4-8 to the national championship game in 3 years.
Yeah, but the question is, would Kalen DeBoer have an interest in moving to Alabama? I mean, you got a Washington team that's moving to the Big Ten.
And Seattle's a beautiful place to live.
Seattle's the greatest place going. I'm going there next month to see my daughter.
Great fan base. They love football.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm not sure he would be interested in moving, much like Dabo. I mean, Dabo is a centerpiece at Clemson. I don't know that he'd be interested in moving. And does anybody really want to follow the legend? It's like following John freaking Wooden. You know, who
Bob
wants
Knight, you don't want to be the guy. You want to be the guy that follows the guy.
Who wants to be Gene Bartow or Mike Davis or whoever it might be?
Yeah, Mike Davis was in a losing situation, even though he took the team to the championship game.
He
never got credit for that. He never got credit for that.
No, it was Bob Knight's team. That's what I keep hearing, except that Tommy Coverdale never played a minute under Knight and became a stud under Mike Davis.
But I always tell everybody, who do you think recruited those guys? It wasn't Bob Knight.
No.
It was the assistant coaches. But regardless of that, yeah, it's I think people don't understand a lot of times. Guys are comfortable where they are. They're getting paid well. They're going to get Dabo's not going to get a raise because he already makes freaking $9 million a year, I think. Kalen, I could see him getting another raise because, first of all, you just finished playing in the national championship game. And then when you have Alabama flirting with him, yeah, you probably are going to have to sweeten his pot a little bit, maybe. I don't know. But, yeah, I think he's comfortable. I think he likes it. And the pressure is not on him there because he has done nothing but raise them to heights. So they love him. Now you go to Alabama, well, their heights are already there. Now you're going to have to be looking up. Oh my God, we got to do that. We got to do that. These people are so, yeah, I don't know that I'd want to go to that pressure cooker.
I'll tell you the guy who I think is the front runner. I don't have any inside information. It's just stuff I've read. But Jay Norvell from Florida State.
Yep, makes sense.
Has lots of connections with the athletic director at Alabama. He goes back with some people there. Had a magnificent season. Would not surprise me if Jay Norvell ends up as the head coach of Alabama.
Yeah, John, the producer, was when he listed those off for me earlier. He said the same thing because he's in the ACC. Which where the hell is Florida State going to be? No, they don't even know, and they think they're not competitive. Dude, you go to Alabama, you got every resource in the world, but you're going to have that pressure,
right?
So I'd see Jay Norvell over Lane Kiffin, but Lane Kiffin. He's a guy that could handle that. He chews up.
I don't know if Alabama fans would embrace Lane Kiffin.
If he won, they would.
Well, yeah, and he would. They'd be an exciting offense. You know that.
It would certainly be different having personalities.
Yeah, that is the truth.
Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. If you're not a subscriber, you are missing out on great content. And we appreciate you, sir. Look forward to seeing you when I see you.
I'll see you, and I'll definitely see you at the Indiana-Purdue game on Tuesday.
Oh, yeah, there you go. All right, brother. You have a great weekend.
You too, buddy. Stay warm.
Thank you, sir. Bob Kravitz from bobkravitz.com. Be a subscriber. It is immensely great content there. We've got more coming up. Zach Osterman in the second hour. Casey Bartley as well. We'll be back with all that and more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home.
Well, y'all kept saying Jay Norvell. It's Mike Norvell. Jay Norvell is a coach, but he's at a different school.
He's at Colorado State.
Yes.
Yeah. I didn't say it. Who got started saying it?
Bob did. But it's okay, though.
And are they related?
No.
One's white, one's African American. No, I don't think so.
I didn't know that.
Very odd that a name like that and to have two prominent coaches. Yeah. Now, tennis, Who has to pay 150% of his buyout? Alabama? And why would you pay more than 100% of a buyout? That's a little confusing to me.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Because 100% would be all of it. Where's the extra 50% coming in? And I thought, I'm going to be honest with you, I thought that myjumpshot.com was another one of Todd's.
I know. Once I saw that comment, I looked it up too. I didn't realize that was a real thing.
Oh, dang it. But because Todd's always funny, after each game, he'll generally put something in relating to the game.
Yes.
And I thought it was just because they couldn't hit water if they fell out of a damn boat.
I would have thought the same thing.
And damn it, if it's not a great website here. I'm trying to sign up for it. Well, seriously.
Are you all doing post game tonight?
Absolutely.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Oh yeah, we need to get some of the. I didn't get to read your email back about what I sent you on Shannon's stuff.
Excuse me. All right, we'll have about 6-7-ish minutes here, and then we'll break again. Bum, 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 bum.
That's a great conversation.
It was.
Always is.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'll go ahead and 1 second. Go ahead and pull this back in.
Financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Friday, brought to you by Cheryl Sizemore and Remax. If you're in the home market for a home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl, and her 20 years of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl at IndyHomePros.com, a longtime sponsor, and we greatly love and appreciate her. And I'm just sitting here looking at myjumpshot.com. That's Todd Leary's website that I had no freaking idea about. He's modest in that way. He really is. I'm like, dude, why didn't you tell me? We'd be talking about this. But it offers remote video analysis. It offers in-person analysis. And there's a monthly membership. So you can do all three, which includes one remote session per week. So it's like a free week. But it's amazing because you see some of this stuff sometimes and you're like, yeah, well, whatever. That I guarantee you, if you're a father and you have a kid, boy or girl, that's playing the game, especially if they're young, especially if they're 10, 11, 12, up into their teens. It's rare that they have a really good jump shot. It might be going in, but that doesn't mean it's good. But Todd's a shooter. Todd studies shooting. Todd's been instructed by guys that worked on his shooting. Man, very good idea. I mean, I know he always talks about that he wishes that he could do this with, say, some of these IU players, because he talks about the things that we list, guys shooting the ball badly. He talks about the free throw line for Indiana, that that it's not as much mental as a lot of us think, that a big part of it is just form, fundamentals. Maybe it's because they're not doing the same things consistently, but I think that there's a big mental part to it. But I think maybe he's right, because I can think back, and I did not play at that level. I understand. But I remember being in a game and I got fouled, sent to the free throw line with like 1 second on the clock. I think we were down 1, and I hit the free throw. And then one of the referees, who was a teacher at our high school, Floyd Central, he was fun. He was a former football coach, and I was more of a football player than basketball. But I'll never forget. It was comical. He hands me the ball and says, "Yeah, that was the easy one. Now you got to hit this one." How you like that? I like the official leaning into your ear and telling you that with 1 second on the clock, and you have a chance to win a game. I just thought that was funny, and I sunk it, FYI. But don't think that at that moment didn't enter my mind for a second, and I had to just ignore it. And I was able to ignore it, but I could see how that didn't. Jumping over here on any quick questions that I might see. There we go. Jared says Dabo's buyout is $7.5 million. That's nothing. So that, combined with Clemson coming off of a couple of down for them seasons, makes his Alabama the best choice to land Dabo. That buyout is nothing. $7.5 million for Alabama? Pfft, that's lunch money. I'm surprised his buyout is that little. I'll be honest with you. But I don't know. He played at Alabama. So, and Alabama is Alabama. I get that. But he has no better chance of winning at Alabama than he does at Clemson. The only difference is Clemson being a part of the ACC, who is kind of in a wonky position right now, but it hasn't affected him any. And actually, he has an easier path to the college football playoffs at Clemson than he does at Alabama, because who's going to beat him in the ACC? I mean, the best team was Louisville this year, and they got their butt kicked by a so-so out a Clemson team. So, I don't know. We'll find out. Lane Kiffin, to me, would be, I'm telling you, if I'm Alabama, I would, personally, Caleb DeBoer would be my number one candidate, because you get a guy who is a winner, but you also get a guy who is just down to earth. He handles anything. He's the coolest cat in the room. And by that, I don't mean he thinks he's this or that. He's just calm. He doesn't get rattled. He is just money ahead. And they would really enjoy his personality. They would embrace him and love him to death. Lane Kiffin, like Bob said, there'd be some polarization. I like Lane Kiffin, personally. I think he's hilarious. The fact that he has the balls to tweet out a lot of the stuff that he does, it makes him real and human to me. And he's a very good coach. I mean, he's got Ole Miss to a very good point right now. They're projected to be top 10 next year right now. But if Alabama came calling, there's no way the king of jumping from job to job would not go to there. Now, he has not jumped recently, but there was a time where, gee whiz, who all was he with? I forget who he was with before the Raiders, goes to the Raiders, not with the Raiders, at Tennessee, not at Tennessee. Kind of was a nomad there for a minute. But if Alabama comes calling, I'd say he'd be gone. But we'll see, man. We shall see. We've got a lot more coming up in the next hour. Zach Osterman will join us. We'll talk about tonight's Indiana men's basketball game as they prepare to take on Minnesota. The women prepare to take on Caitlin Clark at Iowa on the road in Iowa City tomorrow. And more. Back with all that right after this break.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
Hey, everybody, listen to Jim and subscribe. Excuse me.
You can still hear me.
Yeah, they can still hear you.
That's crazy. I'm on a different floor now. Make sure you subscribe to Indiana Sports Beat on YouTube. You know, 2/3 of our viewers are not subscribed. So it doesn't cost anything. It helps us immensely. It doesn't make us money. It's just beneficial, and we would really appreciate if you guys would just hit that subscription button, subscribe, and the notifications toggle so you never miss an episode. How was that?
That was good.
I'm warming up day-old coffee.
There you go.
And I have no creamer, which does not make me happy.
Excuse me.
5 seconds.
No, you still got 50 seconds. Oh, you mean the coffee?
Oh, what about the coffee? Boom, chaka-laka-laka, boom, chaka-laka-laka, boom, chaka-laka-laka, boom. Coffee black, cigarette. Start my day like all the rest. There's a good opening song, Johnny Boy.
All right, 20 seconds. I'll check in with Zach and make sure he's good to go.
We could do do it like the Saturday Night Live. 5 seconds.
812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is Friday, January 12th. Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Thank you so much for being along on the ride. Brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East over off of College Ball Road in Bloomington. And that's also the site of After the Game with Todd Leary, host of myjumpshot.com. You know what? That's going to be one of our new sponsors, myjumpshot.com. It just sounds fun saying that. What a great name. You know, with all of the names that are out there now, you know, it's kind of hard to come up with a unique name. There's so much, but sometimes nothing is better than simplicity. And that is as simple as it gets, but as effective. MyJumpShot.com. I think that is freaking great. As a matter of fact, I'm going to have to try to get him on to talk about it today. Zach Osterman from the Indy Star, looking forward to joining us. I'll see if Todd could hop on.
He'll be on momentarily. Zach will be, but I know we're kind of up against it in terms of guests. Why don't we just talk about it on the post-game show tonight?
Well,
I know you want to talk about the game, but you can also.
But the last segment is open, right?
Unless something changes, we've got Zach coming up here in just a moment. Then we'll have Greg Smith and then Casey Bartley.
Oh, my bad.
But again, things could change, so you never know.
Well, it's the only way it's going to change is if Zach doesn't show up, and you just said he's going to.
No, Zach will be on, and Casey's actually making sure he's good to go too. So we'll see.
Yeah, we'll talk about it tonight. So tune in for the after the post game show after the game with Todd Leary, brought to you by MyJumpShot.com. How perfect does that sound? I love it. And Zach Osterman from the Indy Star joining us now. Zachary, how are you doing, brother?
I'm good. How about you, Jim?
I can't complain. Just I'm inside, so I'm not freezing my almost said my Xavier Johnson's off, but that would have been a bad joke, huh? But I already said it. It's out. Indiana taking on a Minnesota team tonight that is not your grandpa's Minnesota team. They're 3-1 in conference play. Haven't played as tough a schedule as anybody else, but you have to respect any and everybody in the league. That's just what you have to do. Indiana coming off of a very, very poor performance in so many ways. And even with that, they are a 4.5-point favorite tonight. They're in Assembly Hall, so that gives that's probably worth 3 points by itself. And they obviously play a lot better in Assembly Hall. Most teams do play better at home, but they've got to get, I don't know if it's get out of their heads or what, but they just seem kind of dysfunctional right now.
Yeah, I don't know if they seem dysfunctional to me so much as they just look like a young team struggling to find consistency, which is kind of what young teams, tend to do. Most of them, not all of them. Some of them can play through it. Some are built a little different. Some are just so talented that, it just kind of comes no matter what. But I think a lot of them, struggle to find, particularly away from home. You talk about playing at home. Yeah, it's usually easier. You're sleeping in your own bed. You've got your own fans. Your routine's not disrupted. There's no, there's fewer distractions in terms of like student sections and whatever else. I think, and I don't know, I got some criticism for saying Indiana was a young team on Tuesday. I mean, they're 222nd in Division I experience per KenPom. They're 264th in minutes continuity. So, I mean, like they're pretty young.
Well, there's no doubt that they're young. I think that the issue is that they shouldn't be young.
Well, I mean, I think everybody's
going to that in the offseason.
Well, I think everybody's going to be a little younger in the portal era. Also, it's worth saying, like, this was always going to be a year of roster turnover for Indiana. We knew Jalen Hood-Schifino was leaving. We knew Trace Jackson-Davis was leaving. We knew Race Thompson and Miller Kopp were out of eligibility. So there's, basically your top 4 players from a season ago. All it takes is 1 or 2 players deciding they want to leave via the portal, and suddenly you end up where Indiana is, which is half your roster is turned over. And so you wind up with a team that's not just maybe young in years, but it's also young in years together. And a lot of these guys haven't played a lot of basketball together when you compare, for example, Race Thompson and Trace Jackson-Davis, or you compare, Trey Galloway and Trace Jackson-Davis, or whomever. I think that teams like that just tend to play better on the road, and they tend to look worse play better at home. They tend to look worse on the road, and they tend to basically just kind of struggle for consistency. And I think that's where Indiana is right now. I think what makes a game like Friday important, among other things, I think, first of all, you at least have to find that consistency at home. You at least, if you have to give yourself that platform to say, hey, here we play well. Here we sort of the things we do, we make sure they work, and we just kind of stay on top of it. And that gives us a platform to build on, as we slowly try to, sort of amass the habits that let you go to an Illinois and put in a good performance, or an Ohio State and put in a good performance, or even a Penn State or a Maryland and put in a good performance, to look at some of Indiana's upcoming road games. The other piece of it is you've got, at some point, Indiana's got to start adding some quality wins here. And Minnesota's not necessarily one, though I don't know exactly where they are in the net at the moment. But Purdue certainly on Tuesday would be one. And I'm not suggesting Indiana could overlook Minnesota. If anything, I think Indiana's got to be prepared for a pretty feisty sort of effort from Minnesota, because you talk about, it's not maybe what we expected from this team. They are 12-3. They're 3-1 in the Big Ten. But I think that there's an extent to which, even if Indiana is maybe not, vintage Indiana, so to speak, right now, I think there's an extent to which Minnesota winning at Indiana would feel like a statement to Minnesota, and would feel like, I think to Minnesota, it would feel like saying, hey, this is where we are now. This is what we're capable of. Don't take us lightly. So I think Indiana's got to be ready for a really, really good shot here from Minnesota. And it's going to be interesting just to kind of see how the Hoosiers handle that, because the other thing is Minnesota got the whole week off. This was one of Minnesota's. Everybody gets like 2 built-in off weeks this year, and this was one of Minnesota's. So, is Indiana kind of prepared for that? Is Indiana in a mind frame where it's moved past, it's learned from and moved past the Rutgers game, and it is prepared to take this game deathly seriously, because I think Minnesota is.
You were the first to report that the Big Ten had, I guess, viewed and decided there was no additional punishment needed for Xavier Johnson for his transgression at Rutgers, in which he was kicked out of the game. The question has been lingering: will there be anything from Mike Woodson? And if so, is that going to be done behind the curtains, or is that going to happen tonight in some fashion? And I think he starts. I don't think that there's a change in the lineup at all, personally, but we will see.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, the Big Ten is not going to review it, which it wasn't a huge surprise. I mean, it is worth saying. I mean, ejection is a pretty stiff penalty, I mean, and I understand, like, when you see what Xavier Johnson did, you absolutely understand why the referees kind of got to where they got to and making that call. But the point is, like, disqualification from a game is a pretty stiff penalty. It
especially from the first half.
There's not a lot that you can do in a basketball game that gets you ejected. And so that's already a pretty stiff penalty. Mike Woodson has broadly, the one glaring exception is that Northwestern game in his first season up in Evanston. Broadly, he has tended to keep a lot of that stuff behind closed doors. I'm with you. I guess if you told me to guess, if you just said, what do you think will happen? I don't think we will see any more sort of forward-facing punishment for Xavier Johnson. I'm pretty confident in saying there has been more in some form or another, but I don't know that it's going to include, some sort of punitive action this weekend. Maybe he starts on the bench, something like that. I don't know. But I would be surprised if it's anything major.
Minnesota's best win coming at home over Nebraska, but that was early, and they're currently on like a 7-game winning streak. And I think that started their winning streak. And while Nebraska is obviously a good team, they just beat Purdue, they beat Indiana. That's never happened for them. They're hanging that banner. They're probably hanging a banner for that. But Minnesota beat Nebraska, who is a good team. And so
they came back from down. I mean, they were down big in that game too. Nebraska was up 10 or 11 points. Obviously, that was in Minnesota. Or Minneapolis. Nebraska was up 39-22 and lost that game. So you get a sense for how Minnesota was able to kind of scrap its way back.
Yeah, and so Indiana is going to have to find a way to get around their issues, their shooting woes, the free throw shooting. I don't understand, but it's basic things that has really been the downfall of this team. Free throws, turnovers, rebounding. I mean, those are all just things that are almost what you would call forced unforced errors.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny, like the rebounding part of it. I mean, Indiana has never been under Mike Woodson an elite rebounding team, despite sort of its size. And I mean, like this,
And that's not a good thing, though.
If you want to, well, and it's, I mean, it is reflective. I mean, if you go back to last year, Indiana was 19th in the country in average height, according to Kim Pomeroy. This year, the Hoosiers are third. I think it's reflective of the way teams have chosen to attack Indiana, which is basically to take a lot of jumpers and sort of reach for a lot of long rebounds, knowing that Indiana actually tends to have more players on the floor that will gravitate toward the rim and will camp, under or around the rim for those sorts of rebounds rather than the long caroms. And that's kind of a philosophical discussion that probably is a little bit more just preference and style. The other two, I mean, free throws, I don't think Mike Woodson would sit here and say anything other than like Indiana's just got to be better with free throws. They're last in the conference in league games alone. They're only hitting 60.7% of their free throws. That's not nearly good enough. Turnovers, I think, and all this stuff kind of layers together. I've always felt that in most cases, turnovers are a symptom of something else. Either your personnel is not good enough or you're trying to play too fast. I think in Indiana's case, sometimes it feels like Indiana is committing these turnovers because it is feeling sort of a pressure on itself to be better offensively, to not necessarily chase games. Because I mean, you look at that Rutgers game, for example, they only lost by 9. I think what was Rutgers led by 13 at one point, but it was a back and forth game for a lot of that game. It's more, I think, the pressure Indiana feels because it understands it struggles sometimes to score the ball. So you got to feel like you force things, and then mistakes compound on one another. It's little things. It's traveling in the lane. It's just stuff that should be sort of easier to avoid. But it is stuff that, as you said, it's I mean, if you're Mike Woodson, I think you're holding up the stat sheet from Rutgers and saying, fellas, you held them without a field goal for the last 4 minutes and 40 seconds. If we take off 2 of these turnovers and we make 5 of these free throws and 1 more 3, we win the game. That's it. That's all we're talking about. And 5 more free throws, Indiana would still be 9 of 15 from the line. That's not very good. But the point is 5 more free throws, 1 more 3, and take away a couple turnovers, and that's probably a 10, 12-point swing. And so I think that, the flip side is, if you're a coach, I think justifiably, I don't think this is smoke and mirrors. I don't think this is like snake oil tail. I think justifiably say we're not as far away as you think we are. If we just, we're losing these games on the margins. You limit these mistakes here and here and here, and we will be better. And you go back to like an Ohio State game, even accepting for the fact that Ohio State really tore Indiana up on the glass and exploited that particular weakness in Indiana's game. Indiana is 75% from the free throw line. Indiana is 5 of 12 from 3, very efficient. Didn't take a ton of them, but very efficient. Indiana only turns the ball over 4 times. Indiana wins the game. And so this is where I say again, if you are Indiana, you've got to look at every home game as an opportunity in a more friendly environment with your own fans and your own shooting, your own sight lines and your own shooting windows and all these different things, to put in good performances that improve some of these things that you feel like you can build on when you do go away from home or when you face a Purdue or whatever it might be. I know that everybody kind of wants there to be a magic formula, but I remember I covered the Nationals as an intern years and years ago, and they were very bad. That was the year I think they won like 56 or 58 games. It was the year that they got the rights to draft Steven Strasburg, number 1 overall the next year. And we were interviewing Dimitri Young, who'd obviously played on that Tigers team that was really, really bad a few years earlier, that I think still owns the record for most losses in a season. And we said, is there nothing you can do? Is there nothing you can change? Is there nothing that you can sort of alter in your daily process as a team to get better? I think in particular, we were asking about hitting. And he said, really, there's not. It's just like you've just got to keep putting in the work, keep getting in the cages, watch your swings, watch your film, study your pitchers, all that different kind of stuff. And somebody said, is there no magic formula? Like, is there really just no magic formula for figuring this out? And he paused for a second, and then he smiled because Dimitri was always a good quote, and he was a funny guy, probably still is. I shouldn't talk about him like he's not around anymore. And he said, "Well, I guess Bud Selig took care of all that, didn't he?" And he was referring to, some pharmaceutical enhancement. But his point was, it's baseball. It's been baseball for 100 years. Yeah, there's stuff you can do, but it's against the rules. And I'm not suggesting Indiana should break the rules. What I'm suggesting is people want there to be magic fixes. There aren't. You've just got to keep hammering away at it. Every once in a while, you can try and, do something a little different. But, we see movies and we assume there are these Hollywood moments where everybody gathers in a dark gym and has some sort of honest conversation with one another. And that's, that triggers some turnaround. It's finding a way to build better habits that build more consistent performances that eventually build you into a better team. And, frankly, I think we saw this a little bit last season with a team that I would argue was better and almost certainly was more talented and more experienced. It started at home. It started with that Wisconsin game, with that Michigan State game, with that Ohio State game. It started by building those kinds of performances at home and then allowing that to travel on the road to your Minnesotas, to your Michigans, to your Purdues, et cetera.
Zach Osterman with the Indy Star. Make sure you're giving him a follow, be a subscriber, keep local papers alive. Can't not have those. Zach, I will see you tonight, my friend.
Sounds good, brother. Thanks for having me.
Thank you as always. We've got lots more coming up. The National Director of Recruiting for Football for Rivals, Greg Smith, joins us, and Travis Miller from Boiler Upload, as we'll be talking about Big Ten and college football in general with all that's going on. Coming back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly. Hey, Greg, how are you, man? Are you muted?
Say something again. You might have been muted for a second.
Doesn't look like it, though. The microphone's not working.
Yeah, make sure your microphone's connected, I guess, is really what might be the issue, because he's not muted on our end.
Travis, how are you doing, by the way?
I'm good. Since I'm coming out of the bullpen, can you guys play Inner Sandman for me?
We would. There you go.
Now?
Yes, sir. How are you, man?
Good. Hey, just real quick, Jim. I am national recruiting analyst, not national recruiting director. That is Gorney. I don't want to mislead the people out here.
Got to get those titles right.
Yeah, they'll be looking. They can look for Gorney on that one.
And Travis, thanks for filling in for Casey, and sorry for getting the schedule mixed up with you two. I know it's been confusing the past couple of weeks.
It's okay. I figured he wanted me on at 9:50 or 10:10, and I was like, oh crap, it's 9:46. I better go and get out there.
Greg, Travis is with Boiler Upload, Purdue Rivals, and then of course I'm the publisher for Indiana Rivals. But they're just got so much going on. Got Kalen DeBoer high up on the list of potentials for Alabama, and he would be a hell of a fit. I know Kalen. He would be my first call. Although Lane Kiffin is hard not to look at it, no matter. I know he's got some baggage, but I think that in the end, Alabama would probably like him, the fans, because all you got to do is win. Right. If you win, they're gonna love you.
It's all matter. It's all good if you win. But if you
they'd love Travis if he won.
Right.
Hey, you know who else made noise for Kent State football? Like Nick Saban, Darrell Hazel, and he's not doing anything right now, as far as I know.
Well, I bet he's going to keep not doing anything. I don't expect any calls from Tuscaloosa anytime soon. There.
Oh, that was a terrible hire. Oh man, it was bad.
That was
dude. You can't talk about terrible hires. Indiana leads the nation in terrible hires on both sides of football and basketball. Darrell
Hazel won more Big Ten games at Illinois than he did at Purdue in 4 years.
All right, here we go, guys. Just a few seconds.
Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to anymoreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by the Ugly Grouper. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, on this Friday. I hope you're getting ready for a cold one. It's going to be very, very Arctic-like this weekend, but there's a lot going on. We've been talking about Indiana basketball. They play Minnesota tonight. When's Purdue play next, Travis?
They play tomorrow at home against Penn State about 2:15, I think, is the tip-off time.
And then they come to Bloomington next Tuesday to play Indiana, and that'll be a wild affair. Looking forward to that. But we're here to talk about football now, and Greg Smith, the national recruiting analyst for football for Rivals, is with us. Thank you so much. Great to meet you. He just joined Rivals not too long ago, so congratulations. Thank you, and it's nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you very much for the congratulations. It is great to meet you and great to be on. I'm happy to hear, though, in a weird way, that we're not the only ones getting the Arctic chill. As I woke up to, I think it was like 6 inches of snow, and it's supposed to be negatives for the rest of the weekend. So, yeah, great.
Where are you, in Chicago?
I am not. I am in Omaha, Nebraska.
Omaha. Yes. Well, you should. Well, we'll get some steaks from Greg. You can send us some steaks, baby. Man, the Big Ten, there is so much going on. I don't expect Jim Harbaugh to be here next year. I thought Kalen DeBoer was going to be here next year. We're not positive. Because ironically, Washington is on Indiana's schedule in Bloomington next year, which I was looking forward to that. We'll see if that happens. I don't know if Kalen would not want the Alabama job. It's not about not wanting it. It's about looking at your situation. He's at a place that he took a team that was 4-8, and 3 years later they're playing in the national championship game. That's virtually not possible in college football, but he did it. He's done nothing but win everywhere he's been in his life. He's 104-12 as a coach. His personality is perfect. He is just a humble, great guy. But he's got a great situation. The Washington fans freaking love football. They support him. His expectations are his expectations. He sets the bar. Alabama, the fans are going to set the bar because of where they've been. And, man, he's going to have to climb a flight of stairs when he gets to Tuscaloosa just to get to that bar. So I don't know if he would want to deal with that personally.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Is that I think there's two considerations or 2 or 3 big considerations there for Kalen DeBoer if he were to try to take that job or be interested in it. One of them is, and you didn't mention it, I'm surprised, is that following Nick Saban. Like, do you want to do that? Like, do you want to, like, you talk about the expectations. The expectations are also where they are because of the history that Nick Saban just had there. And so, do you want to be the guy that follows the man, or do you want to be the next guy? Do you want to let them go ahead and, blow out the next guy after 3 years because he couldn't live up to it, and then you take over? The other thing is I think that you have to kind of consider, if you're DeBoer, and I think that this would make you lean towards Alabama, to be honest, is it more likely that your situation in Washington is sustainable, especially as you come into the Big Ten, or do you think that you can continue to keep Alabama rolling given what they already have, even though I'm sure they'll lose a couple of guys because that's just the nature of college football right now. So I think if you weigh it out that way, it's a point towards Alabama. But, man, it would be tough for me if it were me to want to follow Nick Saban.
One of our listeners, Michael, says that Kalen apparently canceled an appearance on a radio show this morning. I don't know that to be a fact, but if that is the truth, I would give great credence to that, because my experience was that I had Dane Fife and Michael Lewis scheduled to come on a couple of years ago. Both were assistant coaches. They were getting ready to play each other in the NCAA tournament at the UCLA and Michigan State, both Indiana ties. But I didn't when Dane canceled, he had canceled something the night before, and I'm like, something's going on. And then he was hired by Indiana as an assistant like the next day or something. So if this is actually true, he's at least meeting for the job, which I don't know. Even if he doesn't want it, you take the meeting, just like Dan Lanning, because Dan Lanning is going to get a big fat ass contract bump. Yep. I'm guessing
the James Franklin effect, right? Like that's how magically his name came up as like the fourth mystery guy in all of this, right? And I do agree with you, Jim, though. That I do think that DeBoer would be good there because he's a great coach. He just wins everywhere, right? Like it would be hard to see him not winning there with all of the resources and support and facilities and all of that, considering everywhere else he's won.
And so I don't want to ignore that's a perfect parlay into both Indiana and Purdue, but I'm going to have to I'm going with Indiana first just because we keep using the word he wins everywhere. In Kurt Cignetti's opening press conference, and I was there and I didn't ask the question, but someone asked him, the question was, how do you sell your culture, your vision to the players? And just without a batting an eye, he said, well, it's pretty simple. I win. Just Google me. I mean, that's a big set of onions to come into a program like Indiana, the losingest program in Division I history. And he has not only does he not back down from that, he's doubled down. He was introduced at an Indiana basketball game, and he says, Purdue sucks. And so did Michigan and Ohio State. I've never backed down from Indiana, and I'm not going to start now. Boom. And he gets the big rousing crowd, but it's like, wow, you know where you are, right? So he's writing a lot of checks that he's going to have to cash next year.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see because we've seen this kind of before, but not even to this level in the Big Ten. Scott Frost famously came in and said, I'm hoping the Big Ten has to adjust to me. There's been some other ones where, guys kind of come in with kind of tough talk and part of this is just, red meat for the fan base and just to get your people fired up. But you also generally say that stuff at the local club tour where you go around all the small towns in the state and kind of talk to people and there's no cameras. You don't usually say it at your opening press conference or at the basketball game when you're being introduced. So it gets picked up a little bit more that way. So it'll be interesting. I don't know how you can live up to that type of talk at Indiana. That becomes the issue because it's just going to be really hard to really run down Michigan and Ohio State, especially that quickly. But we'll see. He's definitely confident, and maybe the confidence will then bleed into the players, and they'll play a little bit better because the coach believes in them. I don't know, but it's a strange look before you've coached a game in the conference that everyone admits is always more difficult than you even think it is when you're just kind of looking at it from the outside looking in.
Well, last year Purdue had a change in coaches and they brought over Ryan Walters from Illinois, who did an outstanding job there. And I think that if you look at Illinois' season last year, that had a very the carryover effect was there. They were not that good, but Purdue went through the first year problems of the switch over, and Travis, no one knows it better than Travis, who was there covering that. Travis, what did you see was the biggest reason for that? And what is the reason that next year should be better?
Honestly, I think the biggest reason was it was a hard reset with Jeff Brom leaving. Not only did he leave, the entire staff left. You have Aiden O'Connell graduates after a tremendous career. Most of the main contributors to that Big Ten West title in 2022 were all gone. And so you're bringing in a bunch of players from the portal. you have Ryan Walters taking over, and whenever you have a coaching change like that, they have approximately a week and a half to do a recruiting class, which with the early signing period and everything, that makes everything different. And this was still a team that I thought was close in a lot of games. Yeah, they finished 4-8, but they played Iowa within a possession. They played Fresno State within a possession. They had a couple of other games. The Syracuse game was one where if everything that could go wrong did go wrong. And if you replay that, I think Purdue's got a great chance of winning it. But I think things are going to be better. Purdue's kind of getting bitten by the NIL bug right now. They just lost Nick Scorton to Texas A&M. And that was a straight money transaction. He led the Big Ten in sacks. He had a great season. Texas A&M went out and bought him when he went home for break and everything. So Ryan Walters is doing a great job. He's cleaned up some really good, solid recruits in the portal. I think he has a top 10 portal class right now, according to Rivals. And he's getting in some pretty decent recruits for his first full recruiting class. So I think he is building something. The hardest part is going to be the schedule next year. They've got to play Michigan. They've got to play Ohio State. No, actually, I don't think they play Michigan, but they've got to play Penn State. They have to play Notre Dame. They have to play Oregon. They have to play Oregon State at Oregon State. It is going to be a very, very difficult schedule for them to face next year. So if there's any success, it's going to be well earned with just the number of victories that they would have to pull off to get to, an 8-4 and 9-3.
Yeah, to echo what Travis was saying too about their portal class, I really like what they've done in the portal. And funny enough, both Indiana and Purdue have done a good job. They both have top 10 classes in the Rivals transfer portal rankings. But Nyland Green, the defensive back coming over from Georgia, you keep a kid in the conference. Reggie Love, a running back that people are familiar with in the conference, coming over to Purdue as well. And like those hard resets can be really tough. And I mean, that was one of the hardest ones, right? When you get a coach that is established and very good at that, and he leaves and he takes the entire staff, and then you've got the portal now, the roster kind of gets decimated. It's a tough situation to deal with for any school, but if you're a school that is kind of on the fringe there like a Purdue is, it's really difficult to just automatically reload in those situations. Like, it's just a hard ask.
Yeah, look what happened in the bowl game against LSU. Charlie Jones opted out. Aiden O'Connell opted out. They were so desperate for a coaching staff, they call in Drew Brees, who has never been a coach anywhere, as far as I know, and they have him as an assistant coach, and they just got throttled in the bowl game. A lot of Purdue fans are just like, okay, you write that off, because it was an odd situation. And I like what he's doing. Like you said, he's got some solid pickups in the transfer portal, and I think Purdue will earn it.
We'll certainly see. Indiana, and now they are in that switch over, as we talked about, and we've seen a ton of new players that have been brought in by Curt Cignetti and his staff. But the one thing that is been a constant, virtually every one of them are what you would call mid-major guys, which I'm not saying that's an issue, because we see it all the time. Guys come up like, oh, he played it. But Georgia just gets a quarterback from UNLV. It happens all the time, but it's usually not all of them. Even Tom Allen, one thing that they did well, they did well in the portal, man. They would get guys, it didn't matter whether UCLA, Ole Miss, Clemson, North Carolina, from everywhere. And so it's going to be interesting to see if all of these mid-major guys can step up, but maybe it's part of the system. You want to talk about someone who has won a lot, and it has been Curt Cignetti. It's not been at this level, but he has won a lot. And when you just win, well, there's something there. It just doesn't happen by accident. It has to be culture. It has to be the program. It has to be getting the right guys to do what you want and how to do it. And I can tell you, Curt Cignetti is not going to be a guy. Indiana has had this quarterback merry-go-round the entire time under Tom Allen. It was every year, we won't know until it was starting. That was crap. And there was never been a worse edition of that than this year. That will not be the case under Kurt Cignetti. Firstly, because I think Curtis Rhodes is going to be the starter without question. But he's a guy that is not going to play somebody because it seems like they're supposed to play. Taven Jackson kind of fell under that category for me. He transferred from Tennessee. He was the brother of Trace Jackson Davis, who was a big basketball star in Indiana. And I think he got the nod because some of that bled over. And I always thought that it should have been, gosh, dang on, I can't even think of Indiana's quarterback last year. Mine too much going blank, but I didn't think it should have been Taven. And then midway through the season, it wasn't. They make another switch. So that will not be a problem with Indiana going forward, at least. That's for certain. But can Indiana compete with what they're bringing in, do you think?
That is the gamble that he's making when you bring in portal players that have to kind of go up in a level, and you bring so many of them that it is a risk. Now, and you do, like, you're right, you do see it where guys kind of come over and they really blow up and they do well, but having so many when you're making the transition is going to be difficult. But I will give him this. There are a double digit of those guys, though, and they have 20 total portal commits coming in, the number 4 class, according to Rivals. Double digit guys coming over from James Madison. So when you mentioned the buzzword of culture, right? So if you want to instill your culture into the new program and you want guys in basically every position group to be able to help you to push to pull that culture over from James Madison, you bring those guys with from the team, right? So that will help. And you usually see that. You just don't usually see this many of them, especially when you're coming from a James Madison to a Big Ten school. So that'll be, I think, when we get to, you get close to the season, we're all doing those most intriguing storylines about insert team here. That's going to be way up there for Indiana, I think, is that how do those guys make the adjustment to Big Ten football, and how many of those guys are going to be contributors and how many are just kind of culture keepers inside of the locker room?
How important is it? We've talked about Kurt Cignetti, and let me tell you, his bravado is not an act. I truly believe that he feels that way. He is, and I'm already thinking, oh God, some of these pressers are going to be something, because usually in an introductory press conference, you're pretty easygoing with the media. He started off right away. I mean, the Google Me thing. I asked him a question about dealing with NIL, and I should have been a little bit more clear. I said, you haven't really had to deal with it. And what I meant was, you're at James Madison, and NIL is not changing things at James Madison or at that level. You're coming to a level with Ohio State, Michigan, and Wisconsin, and all this. But I should have included all that. But anyway. He was like, I don't understand the question. We dealt with it at NIL at James Madison. We have a collective. And I'm like, dude, this ain't James Madison.
Not the same, man.
And but so his bravado was real. I think that Indiana kind of needs that, though, because this is a team that has just been, they haven't had that swagger because they have not earned it. They have not achieved it on the field. But I think maybe sometimes you have to have it already before you earn it. It's just a mental feeling.
Yeah, and I think that can help. I think that is something that, if you're a coach, if you walk in and you're like, oh man, it's going to be tough on us. We've got a long road to go, but your coach is over there saying, no, Purdue sucks. Then yeah, I think that gives you a little bit of confidence going into it. And you kind of, what it does is it sets expectation, right? From day one that your coach expects you to compete with the peers in the conference and be right there with them, even if you guys are in the transition. Whether or not that can actually happen or not is a whole separate thing, but at least giving the confidence, I think, is something that is important. It is generally important in sports, having confidence to be able to believe that you can do stuff. So I think that he can be a breath of fresh air in that way. The thing that it's going to be fascinating to see play out, though, if losses start to pile up and his demeanor continues to be the same at these press conferences, it will get ugly. You guys have got a viral moment just waiting to happen at one of these press conferences based on the introductory one being the way that they were. If the losses come, it's going to be something to watch.
Oh, yeah. We can't imagine what that would be like. We're going to take a quick break and talk more about this. But the last thing is just to give you an understanding of where the Purdue sucks thing comes from. After Purdue sings their fight song, and I believe they still do it, although they were supposed to stop. This has gone on for years. At the end of their fight song, they end it by saying, IU sucks every time, which is kind of funny to me, but there you go. The way to eradicate that is you have to win a bunch, and hasn't been the case. Go ahead, Travis.
It's not the fight song. It's they played a song called Hailfire at basketball games, and they do a little dance with it and everything else. But they still do it after kickoffs during football. They still do that. They haven't done Hailfire in a few years, but it doesn't bother me. I'm like, okay.
Well, of course, you're covering Purdue. Why would it bother you?
It's Indiana and Purdue. It's the one of the best basketball rivalries in the country. You're supposed to.
Yes.
You're supposed to be fighting.
There needs to be a little anger and hatred there. I'm okay. That's cool. Like,
I don't have a problem with this. Like I said, I think it's funny. I'm not a fan. I don't see things as a fan. I think it's hilarious, and I think if you want to stop somebody, you want to shut them up, then you have to beat their ass. That's the only thing that does that. So that's on Indiana. We'll take a break. We've got more coming up. Greg Smith, the national recruiting analyst for Rivals, is with us, along with Travis Miller from Boiler Upload. Back with more, brought to you by the Ugly Grouper, right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
How long have you been with Rivals now, Greg? Is it like a month?
No, I was the senior recruiting analyst over at the Nebraska site for the last year. This basically since last summer through just now. And I had been covering recruiting in the Big Ten for years. And then I got hired on to do this. I had been kind of coming in not freelance, it wasn't free, but just kind of pitching in on national stuff. And then I got the opportunity to do this full time. I've been with the company for a year. That's a long way to say I've been with the company for a year or so.
The Big Ten is going to be, oh my God, there's so many storylines next year. Holy crap.
Yeah, there's a ton going on. And if we even get to, I'm with you on that. I don't expect Harbaugh to be there next year. And so, yeah, we could end up with, is that two of the, both championship coaches not at their school?
Oh, there you go. Yeah. Both of which are on Indiana's schedule, by the way.
Okay.
But Purdue, who does Purdue play of the big boys, Travis?
We got Oregon coming to Purdue. I'm pretty sure we play Ohio State. We've got Penn State. And then non-conference Notre Dame and Oregon State, with the Oregon State being on the road. So at least the Big Ten was nice enough.
Whew.
At least the Big Ten was nice enough to not make us go to the West Coast twice.
I don't think anybody has to.
Yeah, I think they tried. Yeah, they tried to keep from anybody having to do that, right?
Yeah. I think every year it's just going to be one trip out west, and I think that they're trying as best they can to do the same for the West Coast guys. But
that's kind of difficult because you only have so many.
Right. There's only
West
4
Coast
of those
teams.
guys.
Right.
Yeah.
But Jesus. Purdue's going to get the crap kicked out of them next year, man. I don't mean
that's tough, man.
That's you got Oregon State on the road and Notre Dame.
Oregon State will be interesting since they have a coaching reset. I will say that. And Purdue did beat them in the other end of the home and home to start the 21 season.
Jay Norvell's from Colorado State.
Oh,
yeah.
Jonathan Smith went Oregon State to Michigan State.
Yeah, and took the quarterback. So
and we do have to play Michigan State, I know too. So
they're going to be interesting. I'm kind of interested to see how they do because he's good. And Michigan State, they seem to either go on nice runs or they're terrible. There's no real in between there. All
right, here we go, guys. 15 seconds.
Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shock Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Friday. Happy weekend. It's going to be a cold one, though. Probably a lot of snow in different places, wherever you are. Appreciate you joining us. Greg Smith, the national recruiting analyst for Rivals, with us, kind enough to sit in today, along with Travis Miller from Boiler Upload. And they got next year in the Big Ten, there are so many stinking storylines right now that, I mean, immediately, that could change within days. We talked about Kalen DeBoer being a high candidate for the Alabama job. Will he be in the Big Ten next year? Jim Harbaugh, I absolutely do not think he will be in the Big Ten next year. So the two championship level coaches could be gone. That would be a vacuum. Washington, I don't know what they would do, because I think that his coaches would go with him. Now, my question for him is, Will Rogers transferred to Washington from, I think, Mississippi State. A dude, everybody thinks that they're in trouble because Penix is gone. Will Rogers is thrown for like 6 million yards already. He completed 70% of his passes. His stats are just staggering until last season, and when there was a coaching change, and then whoever that coach was, he needs to go back and look at the stats for Will Rogers prior to him arriving and then his season with him, because that's a little bit of malpractice. He cut a guy in half who was just eviscerating people. So, but with all that's going on in the NCAA, can Will Rogers, if Kalen went to Alabama, could he transfer to Alabama?
My assumption always is just yes, because it always is a weird situation with the NCAA, and who knows?
And the NCAA is going to lose everything.
Yeah, and they're not going to be able to actually do anything. I would assume in that case, because of the coaching change, because you can leave after a coaching change, like all of the players on the roster there's a 30-day window to enter the portal. So I would assume, yeah, he could. Now, the good thing is, if you're Kalen DeBoer and you go to Alabama, your quarterback room's a little better than the one that you had anyway, and you wouldn't have needed to bring in Will Rogers, because I think Milroe is scheduled to come back. They brought in a 5-star quarterback in Julian Sayin, who's already on campus. They'll be okay when it comes to quarterback down there. But I think that he could, in theory, bring him over if he wanted to. Because I guess the system fit could be different as well, because he did handpick Will Rogers to come up there and run that system with all those fun wide receivers that they've got up there in Washington.
Well, and there's nothing to say that those guys wouldn't leave either, because that's
right.
generally what happens. And on top of it, it's Bama. Right. If that were to happen, hell yes, they're going to go. My God in heaven. But getting back to the Big Ten, for Indiana, they play on what I call the big boys. They've got a trip to UCLA in their third game of the season after their first 2 non-con games. Then they go back to non-con, and then they move forward. But Michigan on the schedule, Washington on the schedule, Ohio State on the schedule, among many others. But they have the Big Ten is now, we saw the meeting of the West Coast versus the Big Ten, and the Big Ten won that matchup. I mean, the current Big Ten won the defense. You always hear defense wins championships, and defense shut down the most prolific offense in the country in that national championship game, and there's no getting around that. Michael Penix he was off, man. He missed several throws that I had not seen him miss that would have changed the game probably. But boy, what is that going to be like, just those West Coast teams coming in, because they're all I hate to call them West Coast offenses, but that's kind of what they are.
Yeah, that is going to be really fun to see play out, because even I think that of those West Coast teams, Oregon, I think, is the most equipped to come over and do it, just because of the style of football that Dan Lanning has got them playing right now. His name continues to come up for every job, but he then spun that into a recruiting pitch.
Money.
Yeah, more money in a recruiting pitch is how he ended up playing that, which is great. Good on him. But they're built in that way, closer to the Big Ten fashion, so I think they'll be okay. USC is the one that it's just going to be like, they're already in a tough situation where they were struggling out west anyway. And Lincoln Riley had to blow out kind of the defensive staff because he didn't care about defense. And then they come into a league where defense really reigns supreme. And you're going to end up having, if in a given year, the top 10 defenses in the country, like half of them are going to come from the Big Ten. So you're going to have to figure out how to play good defense to be able to win in this league if you're Lincoln Riley and USC. And all that offense and throwing it around and all of that, it's just going to even out and will not be the same when you come to the league, because you're going to end up playing. And I feel like, you go back and you look at some of the most recent additions to the Big Ten, go back to when Nebraska came in, and you don't realize that when you play teams like Indiana and Purdue and Illinois, those guys are putting players in the NFL too. And generally they're on the defensive side of the football, right? And so you got to figure out how to deal with that. And that's before you get to kind of the upper level teams in the league. Like, I feel like USC, I think, is going to be in for a rude awakening when they come over to play a much more physical style of football.
Travis?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. USC does not scare me. They didn't play defense this year, so they struggled all season. They're losing a Heisman Trophy winning quarterback, I believe, and I don't think they're going to be that great. I think they may have kind of like he said, a rude awakening, a little bit like Nebraska with Scott Frost, thinking that they're going to come in and run things, and it ends up horrible for them. So I'm not sure exactly of what their schedule is, but I don't think they're going to be up there challenging for the conference title this coming season. I tend to think it's still going to be Michigan, Ohio State. I think Oregon is going to be really, really good. And Washington still should be, pretty solid from there. But that's my top four, honestly.
Yeah, I'm looking at Purdue's schedule, and I feel sorry for them. I mean, holy crap. You start off with Notre Dame, wicked. Your next game is Nebraska, a team that's on the come. Maybe Rule has them in an upward trajectory, Greg.
Yeah. Well, if by upward trajectory you mean they almost made a bowl as opposed to going 3-8 or 4-9 or 3-9, 4-8, yeah.
Well, that's progress. When you make progress, that means you're moving forward, and there's nothing to say that forward momentum is going to stop going up.
Yeah, it'll be their thing too for Nebraska is whether or not, like, if you want to catch them early, though, if they are in an upward trajectory, you want to catch them early because they're going to be starting a true freshman quarterback. As good as Dylan Raiola is as a high school prospect, it is always an adjustment coming in. And so catching them early before he gets kind of settled in is probably for the best too.
Then they have to travel to Wisconsin, who the first year to Luke Fickell was not what Wisconsin fans would like to see. What happens in the second year, we don't know. So I'm not sure how much. That's still going to be a very challenging game for Purdue because Wisconsin will be the favorite.
Wisconsin, they're going to be
good. Purdue has not beaten Wisconsin in 20 years. It is the longest streak. It is the longest streak Purdue has ever had. Losing streak Purdue has had to any single opponent ever. So that's with playing Ohio State, with playing Michigan, with playing Notre Dame for decades. Wisconsin, I believe, is up to 17 or 18 in a row against Purdue. And many of them have not been close. So I have the same view at playing Wisconsin in football as I do with Purdue in making a Final Four in basketball. I will believe it when it actually happens and not a second before.
Nice.
Travis Miller is with Boiler Upload. If you're a Purdue fan or even not, go check it out because there's plenty of coverage there regarding that. Greg Smith is the national recruiting analyst for Rivals. Make sure that you're a subscriber to either thehoosier.com or Boiler Upload to keep up with what's going on in the Big Ten. Greg, I cannot thank you enough, man. It was great meeting you, and this was really fun, actually. And I look forward to hopefully doing this again every so often, because there's always something going on. And the level of excitement in Bloomington right now for football, it's weird, because there is never excitement for football. We don't talk about football in January in Bloomington. We don't talk about football in February or March in Bloomington. And there's been football chatter ever since the hire. So we're looking forward to keep on with that. And hopefully Purdue continues to rise, because it's a lot more fun when guys are good. But man, thank you to both of you. And I look forward to doing this again.
Yeah, let's do it again soon, guys.
Yeah,
thank you so much, Travis. Thanks to Trav and John, the producer, as always, for keeping us between the white lines. Most importantly, thanks to each and every one of you. Of course, without you, we've got no reason to be here. Don't forget, tonight, after Indiana plays Minnesota, after the game with Todd Leary, we'll have that for you, coming to you live from Hoosier Hanks East over off of College Mall Road. Until tonight, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.